In this video, we want to talk about how to create darks in our drawings. There are some approaches that work well and avoid the problem of having too much black or neutral color that kind of eliminates the sense of color in shadows. So we want our shadows to have the feeling of color rather than just black or just neutralized value. So if we take, for instance, this red color and I'll put some red here. I'm going to try to make a dark, so I'm going to start with a nice layer of this red that's already kind of brings up the darks to it. And then I just bring in black to make it a darker color. Right now, what happens is the black just neutralizes the color and makes it seem flat. I can bring some red back into it. So the goal would be to try to make that dark, this black that I added, make it actually feel like it's a color rather than it's just black. So you can do that and it will work as a value statement, but it doesn't really provide the sort of color we'd like to see in those shadow areas. So another way to approach is to, once again, I'm using my red. A way to approach this in order to create more of a sense of color in the shadows is to use my red color, but instead of a black, I take a dark color that can either be an analogous color, a color that's close to the red, or it can actually, in some cases, be close to an opposite in order to mute the color. In this case, we're going to use a dark grape color, and we're going to use that because it already has a sense of color in it. So for instance, if I go down here with that color, although this looks fairly black, see I'm close to it, it has a slight purplish tint to it, and you can see actually the difference. If I use my black, the black is much more neutral. So then by using this darker purplish color, it will allow us to create a dark here, but also provide the feeling of color in the shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and go over this with this black grape color. And there are several colors in Prismacolor that are like this, except they'll have a different warmth or coolness to them. So you can, black cherry has more of a warm, moving towards the warm orange, and in this case it's a little bit more to a purplish color, like so. And then I go back in with my red, and now my darks are looking more like there's color in them. Now this is coming with a little bit of a purple. And so what I can do is, if I wanted to go back a little closer to red, I can add the red, or I can even add more of a red-orange that will move back to the yellow side rather than to the magenta side. And I can add that. So the whole feeling here is one of more color in the shadows. The video might not really show that well, but in in real life here, you can see the difference. Now, if I need to, and I really want to go even darker, I can use a black. I can add the black into here because there's already a fair amount of color, and just give enough little bit to darken, let's say, this side of this dark, to darken it up. So it still has a feeling of color, but if I want to make sure that the color is coming through, I can go back over this with another layer of red to make sure this is creating a feeling of color rather than just a black over the color, original color here. Now we're going to take a minute and see this concept as it relates to like a value scale from color, or lighter color or color, to darks, right? Because that's really what creates a sense of volume, of three-dimensionality in our projects, is to go from light to dark, or at least from a medium value color to dark, and that will give the sense of roundness, right? So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to make a swatch here, and I'm going to start with this color pencil, which is a Carmine red. It's a little bit more of an orange red, moves towards the orange. And I'll make a swatch like this out to about here. And I'll make it, you know, become a medium dark. I'm just going back and forth in one direction to try to keep it even. Like so. Then I'll come in with a color that's a little more middle, a little more towards the magenta, violet, or phthalo red. I think that's what it is, phthalo violet. And I'll start from this side and move in this direction. It's a little darker. Okay, a little darker, and then moves towards the more reddish color here. And in the middle here, it will mix to become more of a middle red. So I'm moving in this direction. You can see that I'm building the darks here on this side. And then I'm blending into the other color. Okay, so we see we're starting to come from a lighter to a darker. I can come back in with my other red, blend in this direction. So to start with, I'm building my darks just with color. That is to say, the dark on this side. So I'm using my more reddish here, because as we approach the light, the color is going to be warmer. We move back towards the cool, which is a cool meaning that the red goes towards blue or violet. Okay, so at this point, I can introduce the black grape color. Okay. And then I would start at this end. I introduce that color, but I want that just to stay more in the very darkest areas. I don't want to bring it all the way up here, because it's going to neutralize this warm, nice warm red at the top. Okay, then I'll go back over that with this phthalo violet, to make sure it has the feeling of color rather than just being a neutralized color. Okay, now what I want to end up doing is making this opaque in terms of the color. Okay, now I can come in with the darken the color. Come back over with my scarlet. As I move towards the middle, I'll come back with my other color. Moving towards building the color so I can get a nice opaque feel. You can see the middle here is a pretty strong red color, because we've mixed the warm red with the violet. go back over the darks with my color so that it doesn't become too neutral in feel. And then I'll actually bring my Carmine into that. Okay, then I'll take my blender, I can blend this. Blend the color so now it's like a solid scale from the color, the lighter, more orange red, through the middle red, a little bit more cooler into the darks. And here that's how we create the sense of light and dark with color. We have to be very concerned about the light to the dark, and from the warm color to the darker and a little more cooler color here. And of course, this all depends, in our subject we're drawing, it just depends on what is the color of the local color of the subject, meaning what is the basic color of the object we're looking at. So this will vary. This obviously will apply to certain things like a red apple, which we're going to complete here in our next drawing. In other cases, we might want this to be more neutral depending on the color and so forth. But you can see how we build this